Welcome to the Inland Valley Storytellers. And I'm John St. Clair, leader of the Inland Valley Storytellers, and this is our monthly story swap meeting. And there are currently 5 of us here. And I think we mostly know each other, but maybe not because Jane hasn't been around for a while. So let's go around and introduce ourselves and where we're from. So I'm John St. Clair from Ontario.
I'm Jean Gibbon from Riverside area, from Lake Matthews, actually.
Hi, I didn't realize we were neighbors. Hi, neighbor. Hey.
Oh, you're from Lake
I'm
Matthews
from
area?
Riverside. I'm right by RCC.
Oh, yeah, know it well. You will.
I've been storytelling forever.
Jane, are you there?
Maddie,
Can you introduce
put
yourself?
that table right in front of me a few feet.
Sorry, yeah, I was trying to find the mute button. Yeah, this is Jane. I live in
That's right.
Ontario.
Yeah,
And
look, we may be
what
able
else?
to do
That's it,
something.
right? There's no prompt.
Not unless you want to add something.
No, I had a good day.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And Penny, can you unmute for a little bit, just say where you live?
Unmute and video. I'm Penny Post. I live in Hingham, Massachusetts on the South Shore of Boston. And I'm here because John has been kind enough to encourage my participation. I lived in Los Angeles for 30 years and I was very involved in the storytelling community for a very long
I
time.
remember you.
I was a dear friend of Patty Snow and her husband, Stan, who I worked with at Northrop. So I feel connected to Inland because of that. Also, I was hoping Nick would show up. Does Nick come to this?
Yes, he does, but not always. And I haven't heard from him, so I don't know whether
He'll show up.
he'll show up. For Nick, sometimes it's a matter of transportation. He uses public transportation, and if the schedules are off, he could show up late.
Well, I see that Karen Kraut is there, and Karen remembers me, I can tell. We took a workshop with Jay O'Callahan together, 30 years ago or something?
Oh God, I hope that wasn't that long ago, was
Well,
it?
I was invited by Angela, of all people, Angela Lloyd, because I was in Community Storytellers a few weeks ago, and she said, tell that story at our Artists Standing Strong Together group. And she said, we are looking for storytellers that would work. And I was one of 9 tellers there. And I just about fainted when I saw that Jay O'Callahan was a part of the audience. It wasn't a large audience, but it did have Jay in it. Yeah.
Wow, how exciting.
So that was really a very big deal.
I'm sure he remembered you too.
Oh, I have no idea, but I was just there and I told, and it was okay. And the story was programmed exactly at the most appropriate point among the rest of them. So I was very happy about that later. But I felt very insecure and so forth and so on. But I have another story I've been working up, and I wrote it because of Nick, who put me together with somebody else to do a workshop 30 years ago. And the story came out of that. And I've been reviving it, and I want to be telling it. So I thought I'd come tonight to tell that. And I do hope he shows up.
Well, hopefully Nick shows up later. So Karen, you're the only one that hasn't introduced yourself.
I'm so sorry. I was in another meeting and I wasn't wearing a watch, so I apologize.
No problem.
It's so great to see Jean. It's so great to see Ron. It's so great to see Penny. Jane, I know it would be really great if I could see you. And yeah. So what were we saying when we introduced ourselves?
Just introducing. Jane hasn't been on the Zoom for a while, and I didn't know that she had ever met Jean, so I thought we just quickly go through
Oh, great.
introductions. So we always said was our name and where we're from.
Okay, yeah, Karen Ray Kraut from Palm Desert. I've seen all of you tell amazing stories in the past, so it's so lovely to see you all again.
So who would like to go first?
I have a not well learned story at all that I would love to just experiment with if you're willing to be
Play with it.
patient with a seriously, what's the work in progress.
Okay, go for it.
Hey, there she is. Hi, Adrian. Okay, all right. So this is one of the Grimm's fairy tales. So once a long, long time ago, it's here. I can't look at my own face. So let me just, you can keep it how you want to do it, but I want to see you and not me. So let me try to do this.
Please tell me how you can do that, because that is one of my biggest difficulties.
Yeah, you can actually make it so that you can't see yourself, but I haven't done it in so long. I can't remember, but just.
Well, I will go ask people how to do it. Thank you for telling me it's possible. That's great.
Yes.
'Cause I've got something next month that I really don't want to watch myself do.
Yeah, I was able to do it. Now I can't remember how. I'll just do grid.
Well, just watch
Would you
yourself.
like me, Karen Ray, would you like me to take the spotlight off of you?
Well, it would help me, but I know I love it when I'm looking at you guys and you're big. But let me see if, okay, now I've got the spotlight off of me for myself. Okay. All right. So thank you so much. So long ago, there was a fairy who had a grimy old castle deep, deep in the woods. And she also, as a fairy, had many powers. And one of them was that during the day, she could turn herself into an owl. And so she used to fly all around the countryside in the day as an owl, or sometimes she was a cat. But at night, she always returned to her human or fairy form. Now, she had some issues. One of them was she really didn't like it when young men came within 100 paces of her castle. So if a young man should stray into that area, she would immediately cause them to be frozen. They were not able to move or speak. And they wouldn't be liberated until they promised her that they would never return to her castle. But with some of the usual gender inequality, which has existed for many thousands of years, if a lovely young woman should happen to stray within 100 paces of her castle, she would immediately turn them into a bird, put them in a cage, and she had over 700 beautiful caged birds in her castle. So everyone in this region knew to never, never go to within 100 paces of this castle. And now there was a lovely young couple who lived in one of the nearby villages. The young man's name was Yorindel, and the young woman's name was Yorinda. And she was a beauty. She was a real beauty. And they were in love, and they loved to wander through the forest because that was really the only time they could be alone. And they were engaged to be married. And so one day, when it was a little later than they usually went out, they went wandering through the forest and just delighting in each other's company and talking. Well, as the sun started to sink behind the hill, they both were almost overcome with a feeling of tremendous sadness. And they sank down on a stone, and Yorinda started to sing what is, for me, perhaps the saddest song I have ever heard. I am a poor wayfaring stranger. I'm traveling through this this world alone. And they both had this overwhelming sense that they were about to be parted. There is no sickness, toil, or... And suddenly she had stopped singing. And Yorindel looked around and she had been changed into a bird. And that's when he realized that unknowingly they had strayed close to the fairy's castle. And he was unable to move or speak. And an owl came swooping down. Woohoo! Woohoo! Well, you know how that can be really scary sometimes in the dark when you hear the owl? And he was terrified, but again, he couldn't move. The owl swooped behind a bush and came back out as the fairy. And she was very angry. You will never see that young woman again. And he wanted to beg and plead with her, but he couldn't move or speak. And so he was left there. She captured, it was a beautiful nightingale. She put it in a cage and she walked away. And as she walked away, she sang, until the spell is complete, you will not move. So when he was able to move, he realized that his Yorinda was lost to him. But he couldn't give up on her. And so he didn't return home. He got a job as a shepherd in a nearby farm. And every day he would come back to the castle and dream of being reunited with his Yorinda. But he never saw the fairy and he never saw Yorinda again. And one night, after many months had passed by, he had a strange dream though. And in the dream, Yorinda was there in her human form. And she spoke to him and she said, find this flower. And she showed him a beautiful purple flower and it had a giant pearl in the center of it. With this power, you will be able to liberate me and all the other young girls. And so when he woke up, Yorindel was sure it was a message from his beloved Yorinda, and he went out searching for the purple flower. He searched and searched and searched in the mountains, in the valleys, near the streams, close to the ocean. He went everywhere until one day, deep in another forest, he found that purple flower. And he snipped it off and he took it with him and he returned to the forest where the fairy's castle was. And Jean, you're going to love this part. He just marched right up to the castle. He had no moment of hesitation or fear. He just marched right up there and he realized immediately that after he got less than 100 paces from the castle, he was still able to move and speak. So he knew the power must really be in this flower. And he went into the palace and the fairy saw him and she was so angry and she came running toward him, but she wasn't able to get closer than 6 feet. So he was able to go, but then he got into the room where all the cages were. There were more than 100 cages. 700 cages, and at least 250 of them were nightingales. So how is he going to find his Yorinda again? But you would like this part, Ron, because it's kind of, what can I say? It's kind of a dead giveaway moment, right? He saw the fairy surreptitiously picking up one of the cages and trying to leave the room. Well, what a foolish thing to do. That's what I would say. So he immediately knew that must be his Yorinda. So he followed her and he touched the cage with the flower and immediately his Yorinda was restored to him and they embraced joyfully. And then he went and he touched all the other 700 cages. You can only imagine, Adrian, how long it took to touch all those 700 cages. As a scholar, you would know there might be some little inconsistencies in that kind of an activity, but he was able to liberate all those beautiful young ladies. And he and Yorinda returned home, and mysteriously, probably just because I don't remember, I have no idea what happened to the fairy after that. But Yorindel and Yorinda returns to their home and they married and they lived together for many, many happy years. And all those other young ladies were able to reunite with their sweethearts, even though they had been in that castle much longer than they wanted. Everyone lived, and you can say this with me if you'd like to, happily
Happily
ever.
ever after. All right.
That's the end.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
for
Thank you.
helping me try that out.
That's a great story.
Yeah, there's just some interesting features in it, I think.
And that's from Grimm's.
That's from Grimm's, and I for sure don't remember that story.
Well, what was the title of it again?
It's called Yorinda and Yoringel.
Oh, okay.
And some of them call
I
them,
figured out with all those young ladies that are going to find these men they've been in love with for all these many years. We've got a lot of young ladies hooked up with a lot of old men. Sorry.
that is what's the word I want? That is a pertinent realization there. Yes, Jean.
Okay. Well, who would like to be next? Okay, Jean.
Yay, Jean, go girl.
Sure. I have a true story to tell you today. And this, wait a minute, I gotta click it there. Okay. Oh, you've got the spotlight thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, do you want me? I can take it off if you want me to take it off.
Yeah, let's just leave it off. That way
All
I
right.
don't feel so much of the center of attention, or well, I guess that's irrelevant. Anyway, this is a true story, and I would like to tell you just a little bit of a backstory on this because I have a little part of my house that I rent out, and I have some lovely people that are renting it right now. But prior to their occupancy, I had a couple that was renting from me, and she had one of those unique gifts. She was a medium, and she frequently would see various people, spirits. When she first moved in, I told her she didn't have to worry about any spirits hanging around my place because I'd owned my house for 36 years and I bought it brand new. So there was nobody that had ever died here. There was maybe a dog, but that was it. And then she told me later on that actually there are a whole lot of spirits in my house. And among them were a number of the Seño Indians who were used my property as a trade route. At least they did it one time in their lives, and I guess they're still doing it. Well, the other spirits that occupied my house turned out to be people that were in my family or connected to my family. And so she was telling me one night, she said that there was a woman there, and she was finely dressed. This was a very well-kept woman. She had a lovely shawl on, and she had perfect makeup and all this. And I thought, well, that can't be in my family because I don't have anyone in my family that matches that description. And she said, no, she says she's related to you. So I'm looking, going through my Rolodex of my family in my head. And I said, the only person I can come up with that would even come close to matching that would be the dear lady who married my granduncle, Uncle Harrison. And her name was Charlotte. So we called her Aunt Charlotte. That makes sense. And so when I said this to my medium friend, whose name is Chris, by the way, she said, that's who it is. And she has a message for you. I said, okay. Now, I had known her for most of my growing up years. She died in about 1980 or so. And so I knew when she passed away, I knew that she had passed. And my mother was the person who took care of everything. She and my Uncle Harrison, they had no children. So they loved my mother. My mother was everybody's favorite niece. So she got to take care of the final wishes of many, many people in her family. I'm sorry to say for her, because it was a big task. So when she was going to do this, this task of taking care of the household that Aunt Charlotte and Uncle Harrison had occupied for so many years in Florida, my mother called me and said, come down and help. So I had quite a connection to the family and to a lot of objects that Aunt Charlotte had collected over many, many years. Well, Chris says to me that Aunt Charlotte wants to tell me something. She's got a message, and her message was, and this is verbatim, Aunt Charlotte wants to tell you, you need to get the ring from the piano. Well, I don't know about you folks, but my father had an organ, and there were some very nice bells that rang very nicely on his organ, but I didn't know of any bells on a piano, but they did have a big grand piano in their household. You see, Aunt Charlotte had been a contralto. Uncle Harrison, her husband, my granduncle, had been her manager, and they would have these lovely, elaborate concerts in their living room. They built the house specifically for that. It was a gorgeous house at one time, not when we were going through it, because it had fallen to disarray. Well, when Chris says this, she goes, I don't know what that means, but she says, you need to have the ring in the piano. So now I'm going to back up a little bit. As I said, when Aunt Charlotte and Uncle Harrison were no longer able to live in their home, my mother went to help clean it out, or to do the cleaning out. And I went with her. I went down to meet her there. She's from Illinois and I was from California. So we met in Florida, and we were working on a variety of things. And there was that gorgeous grand piano. And we looked at it and said, this has got to be worth something. And then we looked at it closer. And Florida does not do nice things to lovely pieces of furniture or instruments. And between the bugs and the humidity, there was no hope left for this piano. Both the finish on the piano had been cracked and was peeling, and the felts on the piano were bug eaten. And we looked at that and said, well, now this is going to be a real big deal, because we got to get rid of this thing. And Uncle Harrison thinks it's worth money, but we're hoping that we don't have to pay too much to have it hauled off. So my mother made some contacts. She found somebody who would take care of buying it from her for, I think it was $150 or something like that. And this is a piano that, of course, if it were new, would be well into the many thousands. So the man was going to come over to pick up the piano on Monday. And this was a Friday that my mother contacted him. So now we're sitting there with Saturday and Sunday, and a lot of work to do. And my mother decided to call her cousin, who lived not too far away, and asked if he wanted to come over and maybe he and his son could help out a bit. And my mom's cousin and said, yes, absolutely. So he and his son, Jim, who was about my age, actually, they came over to the house, and my mom's cousin, whose name was Gordon looked at the piano and he says, well, what are you going to do with the piano? And he hadn't gotten a real close look at it yet. We said, well, if you look at it closely, you'll see that there's not much left of a decent piano here. So we are having it hauled off on Monday. And he said, I see. So did you check the hidden drawer? And my mother said, I don't know what you're talking about, a hidden drawer. And her cousin Gordon was a jeweler. He had been a jeweler all of his life. And so he was pretty versed with where people hid jewelry. And he said that many grand pianos are built with a hidden drawer where women would keep their valuable jewelry, rings, bracelets, whatever, in the hidden drawer. And my mother said, I know we haven't checked anything like that. We don't even know what you're talking about. So he went over to the piano, he pushed a couple of things, and out pops a drawer. And lo and behold, inside is a box. He picks up the box and he looks at the bottom of the box, and it has Warnke Jewelers. That was his company. So Warnke Jewelers on the bottom. He said they have very good taste. And then he opened up the box, and there was a ring in the piano. So coming back to more likely present day, I when Chris was telling me about this request, I said, well, let me get something for you. And because after my mother passed away, I inherited all her jewelry. I went back into my bedroom and into my secret drawer and pulled out this ring and took it into the area where Chris and her husband were living. And I said, is it anything like this? And she said, that's exactly what that woman is showing me. Exactly. And I said, well, you can tell Aunt Charlotte that I have the ring from the piano. And I still do.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very
I want
interesting.
to see that ring next time.
I was thinking I ought to grab it and show it, but I'm not exactly sure where to grab it from. I've got too many secret drawers right now. Another time.
I've never heard of pianos having secret drawers in them.
Oh, me neither.
Didn't either. Yeah. Maybe they don't make them that way anymore. It was a residence grand, so it's designed for a household.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. Who would like to be next? Is Ron going to volunteer?
There he goes.
Still muted though.
I am unmuted. I am waiting for my two grandchildren to come in. They're gonna come listen. And we need to lock the dog in the bedroom. So Robin's doing that. So it'll be a moment. If somebody else wants to go ahead of me, it's fine. If not, I'll start when they get here.
Well, I can do a story.
Okay.
Let me put myself on spotlight. There we go. Okay, so I want to do a story that I've never told on Zoom. And it was the first story I ever performed at a storytelling event in 2003 at the Inland Valley Storytellers' very first celebration.
Oh, wow.
I performed this story. It's an English folktale. And it's one of those stories that I really get into and move around a lot. So I've never told the story sitting down. And I want to see what it's going to be like telling this story sitting down. So the name of the story is Tops or Bottoms. Once upon a time, there was a farmer who lived on an old family farm that had been in his family for hundreds of years. And the way the farm was laid out, the farmhouse and barn were right in the center of the farm. And there was a field to the north, a field to the east, a field to the south, and a field to the west. In the north field, the farmer grew wheat. In the east field, the farmer grew alfalfa to feed his horse and cows. In the south field, the farmer grew a wide variety of cash crops and also to help feed himself. He grew carrots and beets and he grew lettuce. He grew some potatoes. He grew all kinds of crops in this south field. But in the west field, the farmer grew nothing at all. And as far as he knew, no one in his family had ever grown a crop in the west field. He could remember his father telling him one day when he asked why, Daddy, why aren't you plowing that west field and planting something? And his father told him, don't you ever plant anything in that west field. It's a complete waste of time. So the farmer never planted anything in that west field, but it bothered him. And every year after he had plowed and sowed the other fields, he would go out to that west field and he'd take a shovel sometimes and look at it, dig a little bit, and it was fertile soil. And it bothered him that he wasn't growing anything. But he listened to his father's advice until one year, after he had plowed and sown the north, the east, and the south fields. The farmer went out to that west field and he said out loud to the whole world, why can't I plant anything in this field? I think tomorrow I'm going to try doing that. I mean, what have I got to lose? Just a little time. I mean, I'm getting nothing productive out of this field as it is. And so he went to bed early that night, got up very early the next morning, took his horse and plow out to the west field. And just before beginning to plow, he announced to the whole world, I'm going to plow this field and plant a crop. And just as soon as that plow started digging up the soil, out of the ground popped a mean, angry goblin. The goblin had green, bumpy skin and long yellow teeth. And the goblin said, fine, and I will take that crop, I will. Well, the farmer was startled because that was a scary looking goblin. And he said to himself, so that's why no one ever planted anything in the west field, is haunted by this goblin. But the farmer still, he still wanted to plant something in this fertile soil. And he thought, well, maybe I can trick this goblin. And so the farmer said, well, if you want a crop, why don't you plant it yourself? I could never do that, said the goblin. Too much work. Oh, said the farmer. Well, how about if I plow and sow this field with seed and grow it, and come harvest time, we'll split the crop, half for you, half for me. No, said the goblin. And I'll do all the work, said the farmer. Half for you, half for me, and you do all the work? That sounds fair enough. Great, said the farmer. Which half do you want? Do you want the top half or the bottom half? Goblin thought. And he took his giant toenails and dug into the ground and saw that fertile soil. And the goblin thought about what could be grown on the bottom. And he thought of potatoes, and he thought of beets, and he thought of carrots. And he said, I'll take the bottom half. Fair enough, said the farmer. You get the bottom half, I get the top half. I'll see you at harvest time. And poof, in a puff of smoke, the goblin disappeared. So the farmer went ahead and plowed that west field, and he planted it with corn. And what a fine crop of corn it turned out to be. Well, come harvest time, the farmer got up early in the morning, took his horse, hooked up a cart to the horse, and went out to that west field to harvest that corn. And as soon as he got there, poof, out of the ground popped that goblin. I've come to get my half of the crop, said the goblin. Fair enough, said the farmer. Remember, I get the top half, you get the bottom half. And so the farmer proceeded to take the beautiful golden ears off the top of the plants and put it in the cart that the horse was pulling, and left the worthless stubble and roots for the goblin. Oh, that goblin got mad. He got so mad he jumped up and down and poof, disappeared in a puff of smoke. Well, the farmer continued to harvest all that corn, and he kept some for himself, and he took a lot to the market and got a very good price. So the next spring, after the farmer had plowed and sown the north field, the east field, and the south field, he went back out to that west field with his horse and plow. And just as soon as the plow dug into the soil, out of the ground, poof, popped the goblin. You may have fooled me once, said the goblin. You're not going to fool me again. This time I get the top half. Fair enough, said the farmer. You get the top half, I get the bottom half. And I'll come back at harvest time to get my half of the crop, said the goblin. And poof, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. And so the farmer proceeded to plow that west field, and he sowed it with carrot seeds. And what a fine crop of carrots it turned out to be. Well, come harvest time, when the farmer went out with his horse and cart, the goblin popped out of the ground and said, "I've come for my half of the crop." And the farmer said, you get the top half, I get the bottom half. And so the farmer proceeded to pull those carrots up the ground, twist off the useless tops, and toss them to the goblin. And the farmer kept the beautiful carrots and put them in the cart. Oh, that made that goblin mad. He jumped up and down, yelled, and disappeared in a puff of smoke. So the farmer proceeded to harvest all those carrots and kept some for himself and took the rest to the market and sold it for a good price. Well, the next year in the spring, after the farmer had plowed and sown the north field, the east field, and the south field, he went back out to the west field. And as soon as that plow dug into the soil, out of the ground, poof, in a puff of smoke, appeared the goblin. "You may have fooled me once. You may have fooled me twice, but you're not going to fool me again. This time, I choose the crop." "Fair enough," said the farmer. "And," said the goblin, "I choose wheat." "Fair enough," said the farmer. "And," said the goblin, "instead of dividing it in half after it's harvested, we're going to divide the field in half before it's harvested, and we're going to have a mowing contest. You mow your half of the field, I mow my half of the field, and whoever finishes first gets the whole crop." Well, the farmer didn't like those terms, because he figured the goblin wouldn't propose such a mowing contest if he didn't feel he could win it. But the goblin really didn't feel he was in a position to challenge a magical creature like the goblin, who he had fooled twice and was already quite mad at him. So the farmer said, "Fair enough. I'll be back at harvest time for the mowing contest." And poof, in a puff of smoke, the goblin disappeared. So the farmer proceeded to plow and sow that west field with wheat. And what a fine crop of wheat it turned out to be. But as it was growing, the farmer was worrying about this mowing contest, and he decided he needed to practice. So one day he went into the barn, he got his scythe, and he went over to the sharpener in his barn, and he proceeded to sharpen that scythe nice and sharp. And then he went out to the east field where the alfalfa was growing to practice mowing. Well, the first swipe with the scythe, he hit a rock and it dented the blade. "Drat," said the farmer. "Now I've got to go back and sharpen it." So he stomped back to the barn and he started sharpening that scythe with a frown on his face. But as he finished sharpening, the frown turned into a smile, because the farmer had an idea. And he said, "That's enough practice for the day." He put the sharpened scythe back up on the wall. He put a saddle on his horse and he rode into town. And he went to visit the blacksmith. Now the blacksmith was busy pounding out horseshoes with a big hammer and red hot horseshoes on the anvil. And when the farmer came in, the blacksmith stopped and said, "What can I do for you, sir?" And the farmer said, "Can you make me 100 long, thin iron rods?" And the blacksmith said, "Sure, I could do that. What are you going to do with 100 thin iron rods?" "I think," said the farmer, "I'm going to plant them." And so he did. Well, come harvest time, when the farmer went out to the west field with his scythe, the goblin was already there waiting for him, even though the sun had barely started to rise. And he had a beautiful looking scythe. And so they each went to the perimeter of the field and started mowing towards each other, towards the middle. And the farmer was mowing away, and then he stopped and he heard something. He heard the goblin yelling. "Drat," said the goblin, "toughest wheat I've ever mowed." Well, you see, mowing wheat is one thing, but mowing iron rods is quite another. And the goblin's scythe was soon so dull, he might have trouble cutting butter. Now, it is the custom in mowing contests that the two sides will agree upon a time to stop and rest and sharpen their scythes. So the goblin called out, "Hey, farmer, when's sharpening time?" Farmer called out, "Oh, I guess about noon." "Noon," said the goblin, "I've lost already." And he threw down the scythe on the ground, jumped up and down, and poof, disappeared in a puff of smoke, never to be seen again. So the farmer continued and mowed his half of the field. And then before he mowed the goblin side of the field, he took out the remaining iron rods that he had planted right next to the wheat, mixed in so he couldn't see it. And then he mowed the goblin side of the field. And he took that wheat into town and had it milled, took it to the miller to make flour, and then came back home and he said, "Fair enough. That's tops and bottoms, an English folktale."
That was wonderful, John. I've heard you tell that story several times. Being seated didn't bother it at all.
Yeah, I had to restrain myself a couple times, but it seemed to work all right sitting.
Yeah, went very well.
I
Well,
agree.
my son has just taken my grandchildren off for ice cream, so
Oh,
they're
no.
not going to be here. So I'm not going to tell the 51st dragon. And I think I will tell the story of Kojo teaches the donkey to read.
Okay.
The great emperor was given a magnificent white donkey as a gift from another visiting power. And the couriers of the court gathered around the animal and began to praise it. Some said, "Have you ever seen a pure white coat?" Others said, "Look how long its ears are." Others said, "I'll be the strongest mule ever, your majesty." And Kojo said, "Well, he looks intelligent too. It's a shame he's never been taught to read," thinking it would be taken as a joke. But the emperor looked at him and said, "Kojo, you go too far. What a silly thing to say. A donkey cannot learn to read." A wise man, which Kojo sometimes was and sometimes wasn't, probably should have backed down and apologized. But instead he said, "Well, your majesty, are you certain? I'm quite willing to undertake the task." "Beware." "I'll tell you what, your majesty. You give me 3 months with the donkey. During that time, I'll live in the nicest house in the village. You'll provide for anything that I want to eat and drink. And at the end of 3 months, I'll bring the donkey back to you." "Kojo, I enjoy your jests. I enjoy your tricks, but this is too much. If you fail, you will be banished from my kingdom forever." "Very well, your majesty," he said. Oh, the rumors flew around that Kojo the trickster, Kojo the jester, Kojo the sometimes wise man had put himself in terrible shape. He was going to be exiled for sure, if not worse. But Kojo didn't seem terribly concerned. His first order was that no one was to see or feed the donkey except himself. And then he began to live a very high life at the king's expense. He ate fine foods. He bought beautiful things. He decorated the house. He held parties. And people began to say, he's a fool. He's crazy. He's going to be killed. And his enemies, of course, said, oh, this guy has pleased me too much. I can't wait to see him crushed by his majesty's wrath. What a foolish, stupid thing to say. Imagine teaching an ass to read. The days ticked by. Gojo went to the donkey every morning, every afternoon, but didn't seem to spend much time with it. It ticked around to the time when it might actually happen. Suddenly, every caliph, every minor member, every person with any significance at all in the kingdom was at the court trying to watch for when Kojo came in to say he couldn't teach a donkey to read. At the appointed moment, the doors opened up, and in came two men carrying a low table and a very large leather book. They set it down, set the big book upon the tabletop, closed, and went out about the edge of the crowd. Kojo walked in very proudly. He said, I, Kojo, bring in the donkey. And he brought in the magnificent white donkey. And the donkey walked right up to the table. It bent forward, it stuck out its long tongue, and flipped the first page of that book open and went to the bottom. Then he came back up and he flipped the next page. But when he flipped the third page, he looked at Kojo and then dumped his head down and looked back up and brayed. Wah! And then he licked and flipped the next page up. And then the next and the next, getting angrier and angrier and angry. Pretty soon, the donkey was bouncing its back legs up and down and braying and complaining loudly and staring at Kojo as if he had committed some horrid crime. And around the courtyard, people began to laugh. And he laughed louder and louder. And as the laughter grew, finally, the emperor himself began to laugh. And then Kojo, went over to the donkey, pulled out of his robe a bunch of barley corns, poured them on the floor, and said, there, your majesty, your donkey can read. Kojo, this is a very clever trick. Of course, the donkey cannot read. How did you ever get him to do this? Well, it really wasn't very hard. The first order I gave was that no one was to feed the donkey anything but me. He always got enough hay at first, but he got barley corns this way. I put them with a drop of honey on them on a large sheet of leather. And he learned to lick up the barley corns, which are much better tasting than any hay, first, and then eat his hay. After I got him to where he's going back and forth across the blanket, the large leather piece, I folded it in half. And it took him a while to figure out how to flip the pig open and get to his barley corns before he ate his hay. Each day I have added other sheets to the book and made it to where it was but this day, I put barley only on the first page where he had usually seen it, doing the whole page, and some on the second page, and only one or two corns on the third. So when he reached the third page, he became angry. And when he flipped the fourth page, he became furious. Oh, Kojo, only you could possibly teach an ass to read. The story of Kojo and the donkey.
All right. That's great. So what tradition does that story come from?
It's out of my very first book of stories that I ever learned to read from. And I honestly don't know I don't remember the exact location of it. So I'd have to go to the page on it. This is the book that I bought for my very first set of stories. And there are a lot of books, Folktales, Fairy Tales, Far Off Land by Eric Potter. Anyway, there are a lot of different tales in here, but I'll look up page 689 and answer your question. Kojo's tales are under many different names. Kojo is a folk hero of Armenia and Iran, and sometimes Eastern Turkey. He is sometimes a genius, sometimes a trickster, and sometimes a great leader. So that's what I know about Kojo, that much.
All right. Very good. Thank you. That was
So
great.
kind of like the Hoja.
Yes.
I could be mispronouncing it. It's spelled KJHOA. I have no idea.
No, I've never heard of that particular one. I've heard the I think HODJA.
Yeah.
What can I say? I pronounce it as it looked to me, but I could be completely wrong. I don't speak any Armenian.
All right. So who else has a story? Anybody else?
Come on, Adrian, I know you have one.
No, I'm prepping for tomorrow's genre tales through the Storytelling Association of California, and I'm battling uveitis in my eyeball, where
Ooh.
the eye is inflamed. So
No.
I'm a little slow in getting my prep done. So I'm not quite ready to tell one tonight, but I will have one for tomorrow.
Mm.
Okay. That's too bad. You could have practiced it tonight.
I know, I
Yeah.
know. And I'm still trying to decide between two stories. So yeah. There's one called The Storyteller at Fault. I'm looking at Celtic tales, one called The Storyteller at Fault, but there are scenes of hanging in it. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I want that. And there's one called The Cow of Plenty, which could be kind of fun. So I'm kind of trying to decide which one I want to do. And I'm just a little slow at reading, especially on computer screens, because my eye hurts so
Oh,
bad.
yes. Oh, that's not
Yeah.
good.
Anybody else have a story? Let me put it back on gallery so I can see everybody at once.
Yes.
There you go.
I have a story, but I'm not sure where it is. And oh, here it is. Because I still need to read some of it.
Okay.
This is a story I'm reviving from a long, long time ago. I was really hoping Nick would be here because Nick is responsible for this.
Yeah, well, at this point, it doesn't look like Nick's going to make it.
I understand. Also, please understand, it's 11 o'clock for me, so it's a little tough.
Yeah.
And it's my second storytelling meeting for tonight, because I am on the South Shore of Massachusetts, and we meet from 7 to 9 on Tuesday nights, every Tuesday night. But on the second Tuesday, here we are, and I just couldn't resist. So here I am. So I will half tell and half read this, if you'll forgive me.
Sure. That sounds great.
Nick put me together with another woman named Karen Jolly for the Summer Solstice Festival in Ventura, or more than 30 years ago. And he said, you will do a workshop on the child ballads. Well, I'd never heard of the child ballads. And Karen introduced me to them, Karen Jolly. Frances Child was a professor, I assume, of English at Harvard, in the 19th century. And Francis Child spent 50 summers traveling England and Scotland, collecting ballads, the words of ballads and their variations. And he put them together in a 5-volume set with an incredibly erudite introduction to each of them. The one that got my attention for this, I've told several stories out of the ballads, but Lady Ragnell, which some of you may know, came out of that, and Tam Lin and came out of that. Well, this is the Elfin Knight, and I read it. It's the second ballad in this collection, and if it's the second one, it was pretty important to Francis Child. I read it. Oh, and some of the words were incorporated in the verses of Scarborough Fair, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and everybody knows, but not really, because I went back and researched them tonight, and it's not very exact, but the words are there. So I read this ballad, and one day, 30 years ago, this is the story I concocted out of that ballad, and the beginning and the end are mine. So here is my Elfin Knight. You see that young man up there on the hillside blowing his horn, the one with the red gold hair. He stands like a sturdy oak sapling. And oh, do you hear the sound of his music? He is so sweet a trumpeter, so handsome, and so wistfully alone. The girls are all mad for him because they think he's the most enchanting young man they've ever seen. And they're right. He is the Elfin Knight, the one we all long for, the one who will be courageous and strong, the one who will be kind and gentle. I know. When I was young, I longed for the Elfin Knight too. Climbed all the way up that hill. I was just old enough to be bold. I wore the plaid that was the symbol of my family and the clothing that covered my maidenhood. I saw him for what he seemed to be. But when I kissed him and would have drawn him down to my bed, do you know, he laughed at me, said I was too young for him. I said, my sister was married only the day before and she was younger than I, but he went on laughing. He said, if you would be married to me, then make you this shirt for me. Make it of fine Holland linen. Shape it to me with no cut and no seam. Sew it together with no needle and no thread. And when you have done that, you must wash it in a well that's never seen water from heaven or earth. And then you must hang it on a thorn that's not budded green since Adam's time. I was not one to be outdone by such a man as he. I gave him a riddle too. I said, I have an acre of land down by the salt water's edge. You must plow that land with your beautiful horn and sow it with a single grain of pepper. And when you've done that, you must suck it in your shoe and thrash it in your shoe and suck it in your glove and bring it home fair and dry across the sea to me. And then you'll get your shirt from me. Well, he knew I had the best of him then. And he gave me the words I needed to cool my passion down. he could not give his plaid up for me and not for his wife and 7 children. Ooh. I told him then I'd keep my maidenhead no matter how handsome the elfin knight, nor how sweet the music of his horn. So I went back to my own and I married my own. And in taking care of my own, my hair has grown gray. But there are times when I look up on that hill and the setting sun shines just so. I fancy I see a glint of red gold hair and hear the sound of a beckoning trumpet. And I'll remember the way I wanted things to be the day I climbed all the way up to the elfin knight, who still blows his horn on the hill. Thank you.
All right. Very good.
Kind
Well,
of like,
Wonderful.
wish Nick had been here to hear it though.
Well,
I thought it was absolutely beautifully done.
yeah, it has been
Thank you.
recorded. It's been recorded. So
Really?
Nick can listen to the recording.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Pretty cool.
Yes. That's wonderful.
Well, Nick invited me over and over to perform in workshops and in concert in places I never dreamed of and never thought I could manage, and really supported hugely my development as a storyteller. And I've been very grateful to him ever since.
Mm,
So that's one of the reasons I come back to this group, because it really matters to me.
mm,
Nice to have a mentor.
mhm.
Well, I've been invited to co-facilitate there's a group of the Healing Story Alliance, which is an outgrowth of the National Storytelling Association. I've been a member for 2 years, and I've been invited to be a co-facilitator in July, and I've revisited the Elfin Night as possibly something I'm going to use in that course of that.
Mhm.
So it's been very much on my mind, and I'm really happy to bring it back, because I hear so much more in the story than I used to. I mean, you know, we all grow with time.
Right.
So it's been great.
Is Angela Lloyd in that group too?
Angela. Let me see. I don't remember, but I was at Community Storytellers a couple months ago, and there was another story I told, and I wasn't planning to, it wasn't ready, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, they talked me into it. So I told the story. Angela called me 2 days later and said, the Artists Standing Strong Together group, which is international,
Mhm.
is having a concert in about 3 weeks, and we need tellers. Would you be willing to tell that, not this story, but another story?
Yeah.
There. And I said, "Blah, blah, 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 I guess so." So Angela and I have been, so I did, is the bottom line. And Angela has been, we are still in very close touch. I wish she was here too.
Mhm. Yes, me too.
We've been in very close touch over that and a couple of other organizations that we're both part of. She has come into via Zoom, as I've come back to Inland Storytellers and Community Storytellers via Zoom. She's come into New England storytelling. She said, "Well, I'm new to this." Well, of course, Angela's not new to storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's just been wonderful. So we've had a very strong reconnection, which has been totally wonderful.
Good.
It's lovely.
Yeah, Zoom has connected a lot of people, actually.
Yes, yes. it's been a real boom. Well, you know, good things come out of bad reasons.
Yeah, right. And after doing a live celebration this last fall, I realized that Zoom is wonderful for story listeners, but for a storyteller, having a live audience is just
Yes.
fantastic. I mean, the energy I felt at that celebration reminded me of why I got into storytelling. You just can't quite get that with Zoom.
Mhm.
Well,
We
what?
interact with our audience. We feed off of their energy.
That's
They-
right.
The
Yes.
way they look at us tells us that we're doing it well. And without it, to be quite honest, while I Zoom into different meetings, I don't really enjoy telling to a screen.
Yeah.
I really don't. I mean, I can't see your reactions. All I can do is just do my best to tell the tale as it's put in front of me. Now, Angela, of course, or not Angela. Okay. Anyway, have storytelling Southern California, Storytelling Associate of California, SACS Junior Storytelling tomorrow.
Yeah.
On Thursday, I will be zooming into the Doc No More storytelling group. And I can send you the link, John, and you can send it back out to people. It's at 3:30 our time.
This is Thursday?
It is Thursday at 3:30, and I'll be telling, and they get storytellers from all over the world. People zoom into the Doc Moore group, from Ireland, from Australia, from any place the English language is spoken.
Mhm.
So I've heard some amazing tellers who I would otherwise never have a chance to hear.
Ron, what was that group? I missed the name of it.
Doc Moore, DOCK, DOC Moore, MOORE, two O's. Two O's and an E.
Okay.
Doc Moore Storytelling Group. They're out of Dripping Springs, Texas. Tim Tingle, who is a prominent person in the storytelling world, is the host for it.
Well, the Healing Story Alliance that I work with have been working with for 2 years on Zoom, but many years on telephone conferencing, gets people from all over the world. I was in a breakout room by myself with somebody from Australia who, it was 7 o'clock in the evening and she was sipping her 7 a.m. tea. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just incredible.
Yeah.
Just blows me away. So I love it.
Okay, well, some wonderful stories this evening. Thank you all
John?
for coming.
On this topic we were just upon,
Yeah.
is there any chance that we can start meeting live again?
Well, I've struggled with that. We have to find a venue because the Claremont Forum is stocked full of books that were turned into them during COVID, and there's no space anymore for our group to meet. I do have one lead that Barbara usually gave me that I haven't pursued. I have mixed feelings about it because I don't want to get sick. And I know it's not going to kill me because I'm vaccinated and I don't have any
Boosted
underlying.
and double boosted, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have
But
any underlying.
it sure doesn't keep you from getting sick. I know people who've had a couple of boosters in addition to vaccinations and they've gotten sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's-
they're
My
okay.
sister-in-law at the moment.
It's supposed to make it less likely that you need to be hospitalized or die.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. But still,
Yeah.
it's not fun.
No, it isn't.
Survived it, shot, boosted. Hey, and who knows, I could catch it again.
Yeah.
Ain't no fun, but I won't stop living for fear of catching it. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I went to a party on Sunday and nobody wore masks. I knowing my host and hostess, everybody was vaccinated, everybody was boosted, and everybody was, cheerful. Nobody worried about it, but everybody had taken care.
Yeah.
So, and it was a small group, so I trust we were okay.
Yeah, if we went back to live story swap meetings, I mean, we do get new people come in, which you want to do, but you have no idea what their background is.
They are.
Well, yeah. Now, inland, this is inland, South Coast Storytelling Guild does meet in person.
Mhm.
They meet Thursday night. And we're looking for a better location. We're currently at the Clark Commons on Ornsthorpe in Whittier, I guess, whatever it is there. Anyway, a horrible location, not only just because it's too far away for everyone, but the room itself is basically a concrete box. So the acoustics are horrid.
Yeah.
But we're looking
Yeah.
for another place, looking for a better situation, and looking for a better world.
Do you meet on Zoom at all?
Which group? Yes, they have a Zoom link. I've never, I mean, I can send that to John too, and he can be able to look back to everybody. Those are two groups meeting this Thursday. The one is at 3:30 Pacific. You're on the East Coast.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So it would be
6:30.
6:30 your time. Because
Yeah,
this is
those are
Central Time.
the West. Let me tell you, the West Coast groups are, except for this one's very late for me, but the rest of them are usually 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which makes it 6 o'clock for me,
Right.
and it's perfect. It's fine. And so I've been cutting into a lot of, well, not a lot, but a couple of groups, and it's fabulous. I was in a group with community storytellers about 2 months ago, and I had a story that was not quite ready, and they said, "Oh, come on, this is Friends." And I looked at the group. There were 9 people. 4 of them I had known for over 30 years. And Zoom is a really wonderful benefit for me.
Yeah, it would be nice to do a hybrid meeting where some people would be in person and others could tell their stories.
Yeah, I think honestly, John, I think hybrid is probably the way some groups will go, because the advantages are so great of being able to connect from all over.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in a lot of groups that have people from, well, I am in a group that meets with people from Australia and India and the Philippines, and live. It's possible.
Mhm.
It's nice.
Well, I'll look into it and see if I can find a situation where we might be able to do hybrid. Because I know, I don't know whether, we just lost Gene. I don't know whether Gene would go to a live meeting. I know Walter would not. He couldn't make tonight because he's camping, but Walter has been a great addition to our group. And as has Penny. So it would be nice if we could keep those people that wouldn't be a part of the group if it weren't for Zoom.
Yeah.
So does South Coast do a hybrid meeting?
Yes. And I'll send you the link, and anybody who wants to click in. What I do because of the early time is that I tell first or second in the meeting with Doc Moore. And then I drive down to the Clark Center in whatever town it's in, Clark Commons in whatever town it is on Ornsthorpe. And Buena Park, apparently. Anyway, and then I go to their meeting and tell again. Of course, those of you who know me know that I am a fanatic for my craft, and I love to go anywhere, anytime, anywhere to tell, and would happily pay audiences to listen. I mean, I'm literally planning on going to Ireland, Scotland next summer, to the festival that got me started on the Danish Tales I Tell. And yeah, I'll go anywhere. And I've been active with a lot of different groups over the years.
Well, Ron, that's what keeps me active in it too, because I've been involved in storytelling for, I've since 1985, whatever decades that is. And it is the core of my being. I mean, I don't know if I can sell storytelling to the senior community where I live now, but that's what I want to do. And one of the things that keeps me energized is going back to the groups that I used to belong to. I spread storytelling all over Southern California for 30 years in the business community. I mean, I've been really involved in it. And I come back here and everyone says, oh, yeah, well, it's nice. Oh, come on. This is the most important thing there is. So I'm very, very happy to be reconnected with it and go back to Ireland. I so support that. It's really wonderful.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop the recording.